morning and welcome to all our listeners, both in Trinidad and Tobago, of the Caribbean, and worldwide, wherever this program is heard. I want to welcome you all to our regular Thursday morning program on addiction and recovery. And I want to remind all listeners, all our brothers and sisters out there, that this is an interactive program, and you're quite welcome to call in at any point and ask questions or even make brief comments if you choose to. This morning, we are very, very fortunate to have a person who I have admired very much in our company. Her name is Beverly Morson, and I'm sure she's going to turn on her video in a minute. And Beverly has a very, very interesting life experience. She's also a person like myself in recovery. I had the good fortune of meeting Beverly many years ago. You know, it's over 25 years ago, and Beverly, like myself, was a resource person with the Caribbean Institute on Alcoholism and Drug Addiction. She's also a person in recovery, and she has really, you know, she would share some of her experiences, hopefully, with us on the program. I want to say that this morning we are very fortunate that she has agreed to come on the program to share some very personal information about herself, all in the hope of being able to reach out to our population, our sisters, especially out there. During the program, she will explain to us her own challenges. And you know, Beverly has come a long way. I don't want to preempt her story or take away her fire, but she will tell you herself. Welcome and towards the program, Beverly. And we're really happy to have you this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Dwarka. Good morning to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
Yes, and you know, this is an interactive program. I want to let our listeners know that the numbers are on the screen, 663-2335 and 663-1027. And if you have questions for myself or for Beverly, feel free to ask. You know, this is an interactive program, and again, this program will be repeated tonight at 10 p.m. on the same media house on both television and radio. And about 10 or 15 minutes after the program, it will be posted on YouTube and Facebook for those of you who can't stay for the entire length of the program. But it is being done so that it could be there as a resource for, you know, a lot of people do not have the time, or they're at work at this time. Or some people have a problem with alcohol and drug addiction, but they don't know where to go get help. So this would be a resource that they can go to, or you can refer someone to, a friend or a sibling. All they have to do is type in my name, Ramnaresh Dwarika, and it will take you to all the programs. And you would be able to get very valuable information on how to determine whether you have a problem, you know, what are some of the challenges other people have experienced, what resources we have available here, and what you can do in order to stay in recovery. So having said all of that, I want to go over to Beverly and ask Beverly if she would kindly share with us a little bit about herself, whatever she's comfortable to share as a person in recovery herself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dwarka. As you would have heard, my name is Beverly Morson, and I am the Program Director of Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women. We are located in Cochrane Village, Point 14. Our establishment has been 28 years old. On March 18th, we were 28 years old. How I became involved in Serenity Place is because of my own life story of addiction. And I chose this way to give back, to help women like myself who have been affected by substance abuse and other addictions. So this is my way. While I was outside there using for 25 plus years, a lot of people reached out to help me. So this is me giving back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Bev. I know the work you've been doing, but I wanted you to say it yourself.
Thank you.
Yes, so if you want to give us a brief history, where the road you have taken to get to where you are.
Yes, well, that has been a challenging road, a long and tedious, challenging road. And my life started at, my downhill started at 10 plus years when I started smoking marijuana,
Right,
and went on from marijuana. My mother died when I was 5 years old, so I had a very dysfunctional and broken childhood and family included. And as I grew, I got involved with friends. And, old people have a saying, friends carry you and they don't bring you back.
correct.
So I got involved with all the wrong friends, uh, seeking, seeking to have, to get some love, to find, to belong, to fit in. That was my agenda. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to belong to somebody, I wanted somebody to tell me that they love me, to care for me. I didn't have that in my family circle. They were too busy. My mother was all about school and books. My grandmother was the same thing. So there was no time for me to hug and love and share that kind of thing. So I found it in all the wrong places, which was friends who smoke drugs and stuff like that. And so I choose that. And because they showed me love, what I thought was love at the time.
Right,
And my life went downhill. I just continued to live to use and use to live. I became a vagrant, you know, in my own community. I was eaten out of the garbage. I lived in a cemetery for 2 weeks. I was gang raped. I was, beaten, battered. I sold my soul to crack my brain to find a way to die some days because when it was so bad, I wanted to just give up. I didn't want to live again. But God had a plan for my life. And there's this saying that when God is for you, no man can be against you.
correct.
And there were days when I would go down on my knees and say, oh Lord, I am tired. I want to stop.
Right,
But I didn't know how. I didn't know how. And one day, my brother came to visit and he said, it's time for me to get help. And he knew somebody who would help me. And I got involved with this guy who, he came to me, he visited, and he talked to me about getting involved in a program. And I accepted and I went. But that did not work because my intentions of going to the program was not for recovery. It was to see how I could control drug use, how
right,
I could have funds, you know,
right,
take care of my kids and still use drugs. But
right,
I learned a harsh lesson for that. I paid the price. So as I came out of the institution, I went back to using. 5 weeks after, I went back to using. And that's when all hell broke loose. That's when my life became a living hell. And vagrancy took me until one day I saw my 3-year-old daughter. I used to be in and out of the house that I was living in. And one day I saw this little girl. I came back to the house looking for something to use again to see what I could find to sell, and saw this little girl, 3 years old, with the paraphernalia that I used to use, the toilet paper, the stem in her mouth. And I couldn't understand because I didn't know, I never used it in front of her, right? And I was in shock. And I snatched the things out of her hand and ran out the house. And I decided there and then, oh Lord, I'm creating an addict out of my own daughter. I
right,
have to stop. I have to find a way to stop. And that was my decision in turning my life around.
right,
After that, I got involved I went to New Life Ministries where I found myself and where I found, you know, what my problem was. My problem was really me, not learning, not knowing how to cope with life, how to manage life, how to handle life issues. I had no self esteem. So I learned at New Life Ministries to find myself, to love myself, and I learned to grow and go. And that helped me. The program there helped me a lot. And I continued. And today it's been 33 years in recovery. You know, today I live
Great.
among the winners of today. You know, I have, you know, I love myself. I learned to love myself. I learned to accept me for who I am. And I'm so grateful. And it is my way of giving back. I choose to do Serenity Place in order to give back and to help other women who have gone through the mill just like I did.
Well, Bev, I worked at Cora Hospital, which is the Substance Abuse Prevention and Treatment Center for many years. And then I went
Yes,
over to Piparo as the director of that treatment facility.
yes,
And why I'm saying that, because I know the difficulty, you know, the lack of
mhm,
resources we have had in Trinidad, especially where women are concerned. And
yes,
I'm saying that deliberately because your center came as a light in the darkness at the time. Because at the time I was at Cora, we only had 6 beds for the whole of
mhm,
Trinidad and Tobago
mhm,
for women. And even though we had 6 beds, we'd hardly have any women there because, women have a difficulty. It is so much easier for men to leave and go into hospital for treatment, and the women will stay home and take care of the children and the family like they're doing all the time. But it is very, very difficult, I have found, for women to go into treatment because the men, very few men will stay home and take care of the children and the family and keep it together to allow them. Besides the stigma associated, a man could come on this television this morning and talk about, and we have had men talking about their addiction, but you will not find very many women with your courage, Bev, to come and, full face, share your experience. And I want to say, even prematurely, that the nation must be grateful for people like yourself. So I want you to comment here. What has been your experience in terms of women getting help in Trinidad and Tobago? What has been some of the challenges as of coming from a woman yourself?
Yes, Mr. Director, I agree with you. You know, women take longer to seek treatment than men. And one of the issues, as you would have mentioned, their children, they don't want to leave the children. Even though that woman is on the street, she's using drugs, she knows where her children are. And she would sometimes, okay, have a pack of corn girls and take to the children, even if it's just that. You know, she knows and she could go see her children. When you talk treatment with her, it means she feels as she's going to be locked away and her children is going to be taken away from her
Right,
and she would not have access to them anymore. So
right,
despite she's a mother and maybe using drugs, it means she still have the love and the care for her children and the concern of what will become of her children if she chooses treatment. More than that, women stay outside longer because most women use their bodies to feed their addiction,
yes,
sex it for exchange to drugs, for drugs.
right,
And as a result, once that body is in good working condition, then they would remain outside there because they have an asset to feed the addiction. So, so women, and not to mention also family. Sometimes a woman chooses to come into treatment and she doesn't have the support, right, of family. And family is very valuable to women, not that it is not to men, but for women more, they value family life. And they're looking for that support from families when they come into treatment, you know, to be that moral support, to be there for them, so that they know when they leave the program, they have some shoulder to lean on, somebody to help them and to be there for them. And it's families are upset, they get fed up because they would be talking because they don't understand the disease of addiction, and so they would be talking to their loved one, talking, and sometimes they would get help for them and they didn't take the help, and all because they didn't understand what the disease of addiction is. A relapsable disease, you know, and things happen and women are vulnerable, and you know, so women lack support in treatment. They lack that, and that is a critical thing for women. They tend to shy away from treatment once they have their bodies in good working condition. Once they have nobody to take care of their children, they're not sure about their children. They don't want the children to go in the system and the authorities take them, So they would rather stay outside and have the freedom of visiting the children whenever they choose to than to go into a treatment program and have the system take their children.
And Bev, again, I remember our coordinator of career, Dr. Reed, had done a survey
Yes.
when she was at Port of Spain, lecturing there to medical students. And among medical students who should probably be, a little more objective, she did a survey asking them to give their perception of a male addict as opposed to a female addict. And it was very, very uh, it was very informing of the prejudice that exists against female as opposed to male. Males were seen as bound to drunk and, okay,
Yes.
he's irresponsible and, that kind of thing. But women, the names they associated with women addicts, like Sketel and prostitute and all of that. And it is because of what you were saying, because of what they sometimes engaged in order to support their habit. So that women are aware of that. They are aware of the stigma. And even the family comes down more harder on them, puts higher expectations on women. It is okay for men to get drunk, and lie down by the shop, and they will just laugh and have fun about that. But in a community, if a woman does that, that is not permitted, that's taboo. So it is for this reason too that women keep it a secret as long as they can. And this is why, where alcohol is concerned, for instance, women become closet drinkers. But that is changing, Bev. I'm sure when you drive around the country, you see now women sitting out there as though it's nobody's business. They make these verandas that with high chairs coming up to the pavement, and women are sitting there on a Friday evenings straight from the office with their official clothes and girls having a line. So the culture of drinking and drug use are changing, and more women are having disposable income available to them so that they can afford to get involved in that kind of thing. But again, I want to speak about, the lack of resources in Trinidad. Because in some treatment facilities, having worked in there, even not only in Trinidad, but in the United States, there are definite challenges for women gaining access. Because even where you have men and women in the same treatment facilities, the dynamics change. We saw it at Cora. The men start flirting with the girls and forgetting about their program. And the girls, some of them seem to like the attention as well. And they lose sight of what the purpose they came there for. And they get into all of these kind of behavioral problems with each other. And so I'm saying that to say that it was really an answer to a lot of people's prayers when Serenity Place started, because it was a treatment facility for women in particular. Because although drug addiction cut across all barriers, but the issues relating to women are slightly different. And this is why I would dare say that facilities where women is a facility for women seem to have a greater success rate in terms of, helping women to be able to deal with the problems. Although where there's advantages and disadvantages. I don't know what would be your comments on that.
Well, Mr. Dwarka, I agree with your sharing. One, the stigma, you talk about the stigma, and yes, women are labeled as prostitutes and no goods, and, by family members, by strangers, by the society. The labels that put on women because of their drug addiction is far less and far more painful for women than men, because a woman is supposed to be the matriarch of the home. She's supposed to run the home. She's supposed to take care of the children, and when she chooses drugs and to be outside there, she's called all sorts of names, prostitutes, hoes, this, that,
Yeah.
and it damages the already low self-esteem of a woman, and she's not motivated to really seek or do, because she then starts to believe that she's a no good, you know so that is really, really not acceptable. If we could, put a handle on having these labels for women, that's not nice. We need to do something about that, and even get in treatment, as you were talking about, having a all female facility is a good thing, in that, like you said, Cora, I was at Cora, where you have the males and the females, and the males, because they might have known the woman on the street, or seen her or used drugs with her, they tend to figure, well, okay, now she's in treatment, she's looking good, so let me make a tackle at her. They see her the same. They see her as the same prostitute, as the same no good, as the same, even in treatment. And like you said, the woman sometimes feels she likes the attention. She feels good. Once she starts to look good, she feels good, and she figure, well, okay, yes, this person likes me, because now I'm not using drugs anymore. I'm looking good. I'm doing well. And sometimes she thinks it's a genuine thing coming from the men. But the men, on the other hand, it's not genuine, because they see another target. They see another, object, a sex object. So because that's what she used to do when she was using, so why she can't continue doing it while she's in recovery?
Yeah.
And that is not a good thing, that really, really, breaks down the self-esteem of a woman and coming into treatment, and it deters her from coming into treatment, because she sometimes she have been in treatment, and when she think about all the men that harassed her, that pulled at her, that pressured her, she thinks, well, what's the purpose of going back there? What's the use? It doesn't make any sense. Sometimes she tries to do it on her own,
Right.
and it's very hard for women. So yes, Serenity Place came, and it's all female, but although there are challenges still, because you have females who are gays, but nevertheless, they are able to share better, they are able to understand each other better, they are able to identify with situations and feelings of other women who would have been in use, and how to help each other. They have a more understanding, whereas the man is strong and he's macho, and his ego, he allows his ego to, the women are more understanding of each other's situations.
And it is for that same reason, I think, even Alcoholics Anonymous, and let me mention this is not to be critical of AA. AA has been doing
Mhm.
human service in the community, especially in Trinidad and Tobago. But I can't help realizing that a lot of women were very reluctant to go to Alcoholics Anonymous, because the
Mhm.
fellowship has been predominantly male.
Yes.
Elderly male as well, even young male adults have been reluctant to go to the fellowship, because they tend to think, well, and they would say, that's for people who've gone through, that's them for them old fellas,
Mhm.
and especially women going, it stands out like a sore thumb, when you go to an AA meeting and one woman and there's 20 something men there, I
Mhm.
could imagine the level of discomfort, especially coming from a society that speaks about the stigma we spoke about earlier on. The women are aware of this, that they even you sitting there, you have to be very courageous, because there are people out there who sitting and judging us.
Mhm.
I mean,
Mhm.
a person like her using drugs, or a person like Mr. Dwarka use drugs or alcohol and so on. And some people are baffled, because you don't look like a person who ever used drugs. Or I
Mhm.
don't ever, but you can't judge addicts by their looks. Some people looking
So true.
real good. And in fact, they
Yes.
spend a lot of time hiding their drug use,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
So for women, what would be some of the telltale signs you would say? For we have a lot of listeners out there who are listening who might suspect that they have a sibling or a daughter or a child using drugs and what are some of these as far as you're aware? I know, and I should be speaking about that myself, being the expert, but I'm sure you have a lot of experience coming from a female perspective and with your training background as well.
Yes, some of the things the first thing starts to go is the personal hygiene, the
Right,
uncaring, the personal hygiene. You're not interested. You used to be a dresser girl,
right,
looking good, and then you notice the personal hygiene start to go down. You're no longer concerned about too much about what you wear, how you look. You
right.
know, your health, your eating habits start to go down also. You start to you don't want to eat, you don't want this, you're having one meal a day, you go into a state of depression. 1 minute is, and sometimes you see some bipolar behavior, some highs, some lows, you know,
Mood swings.
all the different mood swings, yes.
Yes.
And you're always too busy, especially for the crack addict. I can't wait, I can't stay now, I have to go, your
Right.
work start to, your lack of interest in work and doing the housework and taking care of the children, and even doing, if you are working outside, in the office, you're always, or you're falling asleep on yourself, your tardiness, all these things are signs, and from the time you start to see these things start to deteriorate, something is wrong. They are red flags. You
Yes.
find out what's happening, what's going on. Maybe something is going on here.
And now,
You
and now,
know,
just to add to your list,
and
yeah,
you talking about in the meeting should not feel comfortable.
right.
Yeah, she would not feel comfortable because she's like all these men, and sometimes some of the men may have been men she have been with or used with. Then some of them may know her husband. She's scared, she doesn't want to be there. Her husband would find out if she's doing it in secrecy.
Right.
All these things.
And then the dishonesty, Bev, the stories
Total
they make
dishonesty.
up.
Yes, stories, one story after another. Sometimes I remember in my own life, I would go to people and ask them for money to buy milk for the children. I would go to meetings and ask the people in the meetings, the children have no food, they have no groceries, and they would not give me money, but they would give me groceries, which I would go and sell, you know.
There you go.
So
Right.
it's all sorts of stories.
I've spoken to addicts and they refer to it as prayers. And I asked one of them,
Yes.
why you call it prayers? He said, boy, when we make up a story, we could even convince God. Today we could look back and laugh at these things, Bev,
Yes,
but
yes,
that's serious things. So, but it is important
yes.
that family members know that this is not a bad habit. This is not a
No.
moral thing. That people,
Mhm.
scientifically, science has proven, Bev, that some people are genetically, pre, uh, you
Mhm.
know, predetermined to have that
Yes.
propensity to alcoholism or drug addiction. They could be
Mhm.
born with those genes. We know that, but there are those who become from use and
Mhm.
association and so on,
Mhm.
but the World Health Authority, even our own government now, have come around to recognize, and that's because of the work of Professor Burbrand, our
Mhm.
mentor at
Yes.
Carrigan.
Mhm.
A lot of hard work went into him he was a senator here at one time and
Mhm.
pushed to get. I mean, some 40 years ago, he spoke about getting the breathalyzer, and now we eventually got it.
Right.
But it was for the efforts of people like him that our government too here recognized that alcoholism and drug addiction is a disease, so that you don't
It's
get
a decent.
fired for
Yes.
that. You get
Mhm.
referred for treatment.
Mhm.
You'd either be sent to Cora or Serenity or New Life Ministries, some of these places, and we are fortunate in Trinidad. I mean, I have been up the Caribbean to other islands, and it's really a sorry state. In a big place like Jamaica, way back when I went studied there were only 5 AA groups in the whole
Mhm.
place, and there wasn't even a treatment facility. You had to go
Yes.
to the mental ward at UC Hospital. if you had a drug problem. So we have come a long way, but still, we are still very far away from a society that really understands the nature of
Yes,
addiction.
yes, we have come a long way, but we are very far away because what we noticed that our centers are being closed down. Piparo has been closed down,
Yeah,
Trek has been closed down,
right.
so something is falling down, is going wrong because when these centers are closed down, what is going to happen to the drug addicts who really desperately need help? Where are they going to go? Serenity Place and New Life Ministries are the only two female centers that
Mhm.
I know of,
Yes,
right? And then you have New Life Ministries and Rebirth House for
yeah,
males.
yeah.
And most all these centers are struggling financially. They lack resources and stuff like that. But we are still holding on. We are still keeping our doors open. And there are many, many people out there who need help. Many addicts, some of them don't even know where to go, right? Some of them don't know how to access help,
Bev,
and
I know when we're having these conversations, time just fly. Although we still have some
yes,
time,
yes,
but before the time run out on us, I also wonder, I'm saying at this stage that it's definitely, we'll have to have another program with you on the program maybe next week,
of
if you are
course.
available, because there's so many things we have to speak about.
Yes,
For the fact
agreed.
is, there's no shortage of alcoholics and drug addicts. In fact, the drug problem is escalating as we speak, in
It's
spite of all the
growing.
work you are doing, in spite of the work that I am doing, and all of the other voluntary organizations, New Life Ministries, Reverse House, Heal House, all of those. There's still an increase, I'm sure, every day. You're seeing more and more people going out on the streets there. And we also know that there's a very, very intimate relationship between crime and drug use.
Of course.
The government attempt to deal with it was to decriminalize marijuana, and only last night I heard that there's some talk about reconsidering that whole thing, because from where I sit, I have not seen that improving anything for anyone. And if
Of
in
course
any
not.
case, it has caused more and more people now. Young people are telling me flat to my face that, look, if it wasn't good for me, government wouldn't legalize it. In fact, it is not legalized, but they will choose
No.
those words to justify,
Yes.
their use of it. So
Yes.
there's so much one wonders. But again, I, as a social scientist as well in my training, I know that, when government has to, it is not a popular thing to support social services, because that is spending money. The Ministry of Finance and the Revenue Authority and all of them will get the attention. But in every country in the world, not only Trinidad, usually the ministries that get the acts that are trimmed and so on, and is the social services. And I
Yes.
really, really was a painful experience for me to hear that, they don't say they closed down Piparo. I was the director who helped, who actually set it up there in
Yes.
Piparo. I was the
Yes.
first director there.
Yes.
There's, we could use language to really disguise things. They are
Hmm.
saying that they are going to repurpose that place, you know,
Okay.
repurpose. I don't know what their plans are, but I knew when I was there was always the talk about rehousing the vagrants, the homeless people from Port of Spain, because
Right.
that is like a scar on the
I
face,
saw. Yes.
yeah, on of the government, of the administration, and they've been trying all they can to get these vagrants off the streets of Port of Spain, to the extent
Hmm.
that they repurposed the Riverside car park many years ago.
Yes. Hmm.
But that has not solved the problem, because I don't think, it is unfortunate people like yourself, Bev, and myself, we don't really get too involved in informing policymakers, you know.
That
So
is true.
people who are not in the trenches, they don't know. Vagrancy is not just a bad habit, It's not an economical problem, it's a lifestyle issue. That
Sure. Right.
take all the people from Port of Spain and you send them to Piparo. I could bet you by next morning they're all back in Port of Spain if they had to walk, because that's where they get their money, that's where they get their stuff, that's what they,
Mhm.
and they have. colonize that lifestyle. You and I know that, Bev.
It's true.
So that you have to offer them something that they would want to choose. You have to make it in a package it in a certain way. And
Yes.
I will say this for all our listeners. No addict or alcoholic is going to stop using alcohol or drugs unless to continue to use becomes more painful than stopping. You and I
So
know
true.
trying to stop drugs is very painful. And
Yes.
if you continue to enable your loved ones, your sibling, your brother, your whoever, you know you're paying the bills for them, you're washing up after them, you're cooking the
Mhm.
fish broth when they have a hangover, and you're calling and lying and making excuse to the employer, and the grandmother died for the 10th time. You understand? You know the stories there. That's
Yes.
never going to help the problem, and that is the
Of
reason for
course
this
not.
program.
Of
The
course
reason
not.
I'm glad that you have agreed to come on this program this morning so we could clear all of these myths and to let people
Yes.
know that, look, even though you have gone to the streets, you can come back.
There is hope. There
There
is
is
hope.
hope, and there we have resources available. You have
Yes.
Serenity Place. So if somebody wanted to get
You
into
have
Serenity Place,
Rebirth House. You have Heal House. You have
right?
New Life Ministries.
So if somebody wanted to get into Serenity Place, Bev, how they go about it?
Okay, our main criteria for entry is complete medical,
Right,
right? You need to get a complete medical before entering, and you must want to come. You must, recognize that you have a problem, and you make a decision to come in to get help for yourself.
right,
We are located at number 1562 Main Road, Cochrane Village, Point Fortin,
right.
and our numbers are 794-7980 and 328-6298. That's 794-7980, 328-6298. I am Beverly Morson, the program director. So if you're calling, you would be speaking with me.
All right, and let me just say for our listeners the reason that there's an insistence that you have a complete medical because there are other people there. And when people are
Yes.
using drugs, Bev, they expose themselves to all
To
kinds
all
of
sorts of
infections.
illnesses and
Yes,
diseases.
sexually transmitted diseases,
Of course.
uh, tuberculosis, and now we have AIDS,
Mhm.
we have
Mhm.
the COVID and all of that. So that
All,
you
yes.
don't want to bring people to infect your other
Others. Yes.
bands on at the center. So when I was at Piparo, we did the same thing. And of course,
Right.
that is not a burden. A lot of these tests
Yeah.
could be done right at your health center in your community.
Exactly.
You don't have to pay
Yes.
a cent. You can go there and they can do your blood tests, your blood works, and all of that. You
Yes.
tell them, look, this is the purpose. I want this. So that when you come in there, and if you are there, you are safe so that people don't come and infect you with other things. Now, the other reason is these are not custodial places where, like St. Anne's, where you could be kept behind bars and you're not allowed to leave. Serenity
Mhm.
Place and New Life Ministries and a lot of these other places, these are places where it's voluntary. If you don't want to stay, nobody
Yes.
can't force you to stay. So it means that
Right.
you have to have a certain level of motivation, wanting to stop using drugs. Otherwise, then you would not stay. But I know that yourself and the counselors and the workers you have there, people that you have there, they help people to develop insight, by
Yes.
speaking to them, sharing your story like you did this morning. This is intended to help people to realize, look, you're not alone in this. There are other people who have suffered and that they have been able to do it, and you can do it. And we know how it's done, and we can share that with you. And when you come into a place like Serenity Place, you come to a sanctuary where drugs is not available. If you even get the urge, you're not going to relapse. And once your body starts to readjust, and I'm sure you have had many, many people come through your system there and who have been doing very well outside there. I know we're
Yes,
running out
yes.
of time. We just have a few minutes. Any last things you want to share with us before we close, Bev?
Well, I just want to say, Mr. Dwarka, I really appreciate this opportunity for sharing, and allowing people to get to know one about Serenity Place and to get to know that there is help available for people who are involved in substances. And, please don't stay out there and say it can't happen to me. It happens to the best of us, it happens to the worst of us. So drug addiction has no barriers. It cross no, anybody can become a drug addict, whether you are a minister or whether you are a domestic worker. So there is help, there is hope. Serenity Place is there. You have New Life Ministries, you have other treatment centers, you have the AA and NA meetings. There are places that you can get the help. So don't stay out there and stay in your addiction and stay all alone. You're never alone.
Well, Bev, I'm sure I'm going to be getting a lot of calls, over the
Yes.
next week. And I want to call this part one. I want to ask you
Yes.
if you would be willing to come back on again next week because there's a lot of questions that a lot of
No
people have
problem
out
at all.
there that I have. And I know that you are eminently qualified. You've been there, done that. Not only that, you have also come a long way in your training and experience,
Yes.
having been
Yes.
involved in Cariad and as a resource person there. And I must mention our good friend Garvin Cole before we leave.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. God rest
Garvin
his
was
soul.
my clinical director. I know you
Yes.
all shared a personal relationship. You all, and that he was very instrumental as well in the
Okay.
early stages of Serenity Place. And I
Yes.
know that he has passed on, but his work continued to remain and continue to shine through your efforts at Serenity Place. So I want to thank you again. And next week, again, we could continue this conversation. There are some more details we could go into for people out there who still think that, look, it's a moral issue, it's a behavioral problem, not realizing that this is something that it can happen with anyone. It cuts across
Anybody.
all
Yes.
barriers, has no respect for what race you belong to, what social status. Once you interfere with drugs, the process is the same. It doesn't matter whether you drank in Caroni or you drank in Westmore Rings. You understand? The alcohol will do the same thing. So I want to thank you again, Bev, for coming
Yes.
and for sharing your own information, your experience, your strength, your hope, and to also tell us a little bit about Serenity Place. And I want to let our population know if anyone has any questions or would like to get in touch with her. Again, let me call the number out. It's 794-7980. That is 794-7980 or 328-6298. 328-6298. If you want to contact Serenity Place or you want to get further information about it, or you can call me at 671-3040. I'll give you the information. And I want to let you know that once there's a will, there's a way.
Agree.
Once you recognize you have a problem, listen, it is no shame in being ill. You understand? I want to let you know that the help is available, and you must always nurture hope. So thank you all again for listening. And next week, Thursday again, same time, same station, and we most likely have Beverly with us again next week, Thursday, to continue this conversation. Thank you
Thank you
all for
very
listening.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.